Now on the Radio Whammo Breakfast.
We cannot be missing from our children's lives. They are ours to protect.
Public dancing among Beaumont's minors will be in violation of the law.
It's Footloose, the reboot, rehash, redo, whatever you want to call it. It's back for the 2011 generation. Leen Lamont's seen it.
Yes, I have. Rehash, I think, is probably the right term.
Yeah?
Yes. Yeah. It's strictly speaking, it's a remake, Whammo, yeah.
Now, you just told me that you haven't, you first saw the original Footloose only just a few days ago.
That's right. Because, Footloose is the sort of thing where everybody knows the tune, and I'd done dance routines to that seminal kind of song. And I thought, I think it'll, especially, I think a lot of those 80s films become so much part of our DNA, sort of by absorption, without actually watching them.
Yeah, you feel like Dirty Dancing even if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, although I have seen Dirty Dancing, but like, totally. And that's a good point, because, a lot of people will have seen scenes from Dirty Dancing in the Time of Your Life song and all that, and therefore maybe feel that as though they've seen the whole film. So when I knew that I was going to be reviewing the new Footloose, I thought, well, this is a tricky situation always, right? You don't know how much you want to compare it with the original and how much you want to just treat it as a standalone, brand new piece of art, right? Because let's face it, the kids of today probably haven't seen the 1984 version, probably don't care. Probably if they did, they'd think it was really lame and cliched, right? So I need to be looking at this in terms of, are they going to enjoy this film? But then I've got to be, you've got to understand that all of us kids who grew up in the 80s are going to be wanting to see this new Footloose to see whether it kind of upholds the principles and values of our original one.
The thing is about being lame and cliched. I would imagine, though, that the new generation wouldn't think it was lame and cliched just because...
Because it's old, because it's 1984.
Well, because they haven't seen any of that stuff, so they don't know what is lame or cliched.
Yeah, but you see, some of the 80s films date, right? And some of them stand the test of time. And I can't even begin to put into categories whether things like E.T. kind of hold their own now, or whether you kind of watch it and go, that's so 80s.
Ferris Bueller?
Yeah, well, it's hard to know, isn't it? Because we saw them back then. Yeah. And so, therefore, you carry that with you. And like I re-saw The Goonies and Gremlins recently as a, 23, 25 years on, say. Actually, I'm not that old, but, at least 20 years on. And I was really interested to see, will this grate with me, or will it just be this wonderful nostalgic sort of thing? So I revisited, or thought that I was revisiting the old Footloose, realised I had never seen it before, but did know all the songs. Yeah. And then went to see the remake. And my word, the thing that jumped out at me is that it was... the screenwriter, Dean Pitchford, who did the first one, is the co-screenwriter on the remake, and I reckon he probably just said, give me a couple of days with the script, changed a few names around. Seriously. They're still using all of the same lines and all of the same phrases. So then you've got, like, Ren, right, who's the outsider who comes to Beaumont and is appalled to know that, oh my goodness, you're not allowed to dance publicly in this town? What's with that, right? Yeah. And there's this scene where he's talking to his new friends and they say, oh no, you can't dance in Beaumont, and he says, jump back, right? Get out of here, kind of like that. But he goes, jump back. Now, Kevin Bacon says it, and we go, well, that's kind of weird, but that's 1984. Yeah. When Kenny Wormold says it, it's like, that just feels like, they don't even look at him strange, as if to go, well, you're from Boston.
But also the premise that you can't dance publicly until 2011 doesn't quite work the same way that it would have in 1984, coming out of a sort of conservative 60s, 70s.
Exactly. And the screenwriters, to be fair, they couldn't get away with changing that, right? You can't change what the whole film is hooked on. But you're right, our kids from 2011 who haven't grown up with Kevin Bacon and Laurie Singer and so aren't looking for that nostalgia trip, if they go see this film, what are they going to get out of it?
Because Glee's on TV, for goodness sake.
Yeah. So the singing, dancing thing, they're kind of used to. But you're right, they're not going to buy the whole, there are some towns in the southern states where you're not allowed to dance. So therefore, then I'm left with, okay, so is the dancing in this film, the dancing, the romance, the fight against authority, I guess those are the three things that you've got in Footloose, right? Are they really good on their own merits? And I have to say that some of the dance scenes are good, and there's some kind of cool stuff, but none of that exceeds kind of what we've seen in the Step Up trilogy. or any of those other kind of, dance movies that have come out in the last sort of 3 to 5 years, So I don't hold up high hopes for this.
So who's the main actor, guy? Is he a Twilight dude?
No, this is not, thankfully, anybody from Twilight.
Okay.
No, his name's Kenny Wormold, I believe. He'd done some TV. He is a dancer. He's kind of a trained dancer, but he's just kind of a new kid. And I think they were pretty much going for fresh faces where possible.
What is wrong with Dennis Quaid? Why is he doing a film like... I really like Dennis.
You see, I do not like Dennis Quaid.
Oh,
and I thought he was going to kill this for me. He's all right in this. Why is he doing this?
Yeah.
He probably needs
Well,
a
I mean,
new
he does
car.
some naff stuff. But...
Yeah, he does a lot of naff stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't
Unfortunate.
know. I haven't rated Dennis Quaid for quite a long time.
Oh, well.
Oh, I'll tell you who else is in this who's awful. Andy McDowell.
Oh, really?
Yes.
When was the last thing she was in anything?
All I could think is there's a scene in this Footloose where it's raining outside and she races out, and I turned to my friend and I said, "Is it raining?" I hadn't noticed, because all I can think of is that horrible scene in Four Weddings and a Funeral.
I think that was the last movie she was in, right?
It should have been. And as I kind of have been saying, she's mercifully silent in this film.
That's
She doesn't have a lot to do in it.
Like, I love Groundhog Day, but obviously she's the worst thing in it. She can't act.
She was horrible in Four Weddings.
Yeah.
I remember that. So, but as I say, mercifully silent in this, because she plays the vicar's wife who doesn't really have much to say. Yeah.
Well, she'll be looking a lot older these days.
Yeah, well,
wouldn't
it's
she?
funny you should mention that as well, because I was inclined to sort of say, looking at that face, she's clearly not worth it, But I don't mean to just slag her off, but
Sure.
no. Yeah, well. So on the whole, I don't think Footloose did a particularly good job
Okay.
on its own merits. It wasn't original, so therefore it was there was heaps that was the same. Do you know what I actually think? Okay, you need a recommendation, right? If you loved the original and you go see heaps of movies and you can afford therefore to see something just for the heck of it, you may as well see this, because you might enjoy going, oh, red cowboy boots, and seeing where the similarities are, right, where they've blatantly stolen from the original.
It sounds like a drinking game, doesn't it?
It totally could be.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't think it's particularly worth seeing.
All right, moving on then.
Yeah, let's move on.
For 5 winters, you have hidden from the world. Once you are great warrior, I will make you warrior again.
How?
It's Johnny English refried.
Reborn.
Oh, Reborn, right.
Yeah. Okay, so this is probably where I lose any credibility I might still have as a film reviewer. Johnny English Reborn, with our dear Rowan Atkinson, from such fine fare, obviously, as...
Blackadder.
Blackadder in
Yes.
particular. Well, he's back. And it's interesting that he's back, because I didn't think that the first Johnny English film was all that, and I believe that was about 5 years ago. And it's interesting that they've bothered to bring him back, but my goodness, have they stepped up their game. And I'm wondering whether...
Well, when you're coming from rock bottom...
maybe you wouldn't say it's rock bottom necessarily, but when you're coming from something that wasn't awesome... I wonder whether they've kind of taken note of the Bourne films, the recent James Bond films, and they've really made what I thought was a very good parody of that particular genre, right? So it's almost like they're treating it more seriously, but then there are huge laughs in it as well. Now, I have to be clear. I went along with an 85-year-old, and he laughed and laughed and laughed through the whole thing, and felt that really this deserved 5 stars, pretty much. And while I wouldn't go quite as far as 5 stars, because I'm ever so slightly more discerning, it is a bundle of laughs. It's heaps of fun. There are all the cliched kind of sight gags that you get in a Rowan Atkinson kind of, physical comedy, bumbling, falling over things.
Well, yeah, because that's what the trailer plays most on. And I saw
Yeah.
the trailer in the cinema, and I was like, oh, God, it's like, oh, I can't kick properly, but I can, and I do knock you out.
Yeah. But there are some wonderful set pieces. There's a wonderful scene where he's chasing the baddie on sort of rooftops, right, looking like Morocco or somewhere. I can't remember now exactly where it is, but it looks exactly like the Bourne Ultimatum and most of the James Bonds, where they're doing all that parkour and running. And they turn that on its head very cleverly. There's a fantastic fight scene, a sort of a martial arts kind of scene. They turn that on its head very nicely as well. And I have to say, I think the sight gag of him sitting in a chair that's dysfunctioning and inadvertently going up, and I just laughed and laughed and laughed. So if that kind of thing is your cup of tea, then Johnny English Reborn is probably worth going to. And it's totally family friendly. I checked, I was listening very carefully, and I don't think that there was anything in it that was outrageously offensive at all. So it's a completely school holidays movie, but definitely one, probably a little more highbrow than Smurfs. So definitely one that adults would enjoy as well. I thought it was really fun.
Johnny English Reborn.
Oh, and can I just say, it's got Gillian Anderson from The X-Files, Dominic West from The Wire, Richard Schiff from The West Wing. So it's got a pretty cool cast as well. So I wouldn't say exactly everybody who's anybody's in it, but it has a high caliber cast.
Well, it's Sir Rowan Atkinson, isn't
it? Well, there
it?
you go.
Yeah.
And he's looking good.
I think he's made to look good. I've seen him turn up to a wedding or something, and he just looked really ragged.
Oh, no, he's looking good in this.
All right. Okay, good-o. Yes, more over at lenalamont.wordpress.com, and also the reviews in the Sunday Star Times. We'll see you next week, huh?
Thank you.
Give me 24 hours.
Johnny English Reborn.